This next video is going to look at the propagation of uncertainty. So whereas uncertainty talks about how uncertain a measurement is or how precise a measurement is, propagation of uncertainty talks about how precise a calculation is. So if we have a bunch of measurements that we're going to combine, we need to also combine their relative uncertainty, or we need to combine the uncertainties associated with each of those measurements. So if I add or subtract two measurements, I need to add the absolute, sorry, let me erase that and rewrite it. So if I add or subtract two measurements, I need to add their absolute uncertainties. So as an example, if I have a measurement of 1.0 centimeters plus or minus 0.5 centimeters and another measurement of 1.23 centimeters plus or minus 0.5 centimeters, then my final value will be 1.2. Remember our significant figure rules. So even though I go to 1.23, this one only went to 1.0, so I need to do 2 here. Plus or minus, now my absolute uncertainty is 0.5 and 0.5. So adding those together, I get 1. So my absolute uncertainty is plus or minus 1.0 centimeters. And again, 0.5, I went to the first decimal point. So that's how precise I know my uncertainty to. So that's where I get plus or minus 1.0. This is something that's going to take practice, is going to take getting used to, so don't worry about getting everything right now. Just try and follow the big ideas and ask me questions if you're stuck or if you need to see another example. If we multiply or divide, we're going to add their relative uncertainties. And then we have to multiply it by our final value to get the actual absolute uncertainty again if we want. So if I have the example of 2.3 centimeters plus or minus 0.5 centimeters times 3 centimeters plus or minus 1.5 centimeters. Well, this one has a relative uncertainty of, let me make that 2.5. This one has a relative uncertainty of 0.5 divided by 2.5 will give me 0.2. Yeah, 0.2. And this one will give me 0.5. So the relative uncertainty should be 0.7. And then if I actually multiply these two numbers together, I will get 2.5 times 3 will give me 7.5 centimeters squared. But because I'm only have this number of 3, that should be reported as 8 centimeters squared, because I only want to report one significant figure. And then plus or minus 0.7 times 8 centimeters squared, because again this is a relative uncertainty, so if I want to report it according to the absolute value I need to multiply it through. So that's going to be 8 centimeters squared plus or minus 5.6 centimeters squared. If you multiply by a constant, so say 2 times 3.0 plus or minus 1.5. So that's an example of multiplying by a constant. So this is a constant. Then multiply the relative uncertainty by the constant. And we'll practice these rules. You'll get comfortable with them as we go on. So in that example, the relative uncertainty was 0.5. And so because I've doubled this, I'm going to multiply by 2. Let me double check that because my brain is for some reason feeling like that's not right. Yeah, sorry, that's totally not right. It's just the same relative constant. So if I multiply by 2, I am going to double the uncertainty, but it's going to be the same ratio. So it's going to be 6 plus or minus 3. So if you're multiplying by a constant, so this isn't a measurement, it has no uncertainty in and of itself, just multiply through. What I was thinking about just previously was exponents. So in this case, multiply the relative uncertainty by the exponent. So if I have that same example of 3.0 plus or minus 1.5, and if this gets raised to the 1/2 power, so in other words, I'm square rooting my measurement, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say it's the square root of 3.0 plus or minus, and then I take the relative uncertainty, which is 0.5, and I divide it by 2, so plus or minus 0.25. 1/2 times so I'll write this out and explain it. 1/2 times the relative uncertainty, which we said was 0.5, because we do 1.5 divided by 3, gives us 0.5. This gives us 0.25. That's still a relative uncertainty, so if I want to make it an absolute, I need to multiply by the measurement, which is square root of 3. This is tricky, I know. Don't stress if you're a little confused. Try some of the practice, and then we'll talk about it together.